Hi guys and girls on YouTube, and welcome to my channel. If you watched my channel before, you'll know about Christmas time I like to do something a little bit different, a little bit like special if you want, for like a Christmas special edition on my YouTube channel. I think last year I reproduced a TV game from the 1970s. Well, for this year I've decided to make a radio. Now this is a valve radio. I'm well into valves. If you were like me and you were born in the 1960s, you grew up with valves, and I still like playing with valves today. What I usually like and what I usually build is very power hungry devices where the valves get really hot, they use a lot of power. I can drop the heater chain with a load of resistors and dissipate a lot of power there. I'm a big fan of hard working valves. So this project is a little unusual because it contains two valves that won't actually be working that hard, so it's a bit unusual for me to do anything like this. But I've actually picked this project on its technical merit rather than the types of valves it uses. Now I'll show you in a second, but before we move on, I'd just like to give a shout out to a friend of mine, Fiona Ann Moss, and she's well into valve radios, and I know she's a subscriber on my channel. She's absolutely loving this. So let's just take a look at what we're going to do this year. So this is what we're going to be looking at. It is of course practical wireless. It's August 1955. If you don't have the magazine like I do, you can go onto the internet, the World Radio History. You can download it for nothing there, and it's the cover project here. It's making a sensitive 2 valve. Now like I say, I've picked this project purely on its technical merit. It uses 2 EF50s. I've never made anything before with the F50s. They just don't excite me. But I've thought about this project for quite a while, and I'll show you why. Well, let's just turn over to the right page and I'll show you what is very odd about this particular radio, which is actually just a TRF, tune radio frequency. So there we go, it's page 479, August 1955, making a sensitive 2 valve, an economical AC high gain local station receiver by R.F. Berry. So let's just have a move over to the actual diagram. You can see it's actually quite simple, but there are quite a few quirks about this, which is what made me decide to make this, and I'll run you through them now. Right, so here's the first peculiarity. If you look at that, the grid of the output valve would normally have the volume control from the preceding stage, but the volume control's down here. If we trace that back, it actually goes to the secondary of the loudspeaker coupling transformer. So what they're doing here is they're using negative feedback to control the volume. Now the more negative feedback you introduce, the higher quality the sound gets as it gets lower, but you've got a slight problem here, is you cannot return that to ground because it goes through the bias resistor there, R7. So even at minimum volume we cannot return the slider to ground, so you can't turn the volume right down to 0. But the advantage is the lower the sound you turn it down, the higher the quality it is. But we're not going to get a lot of sound here anyway, because the EF50 is an RF pentode, not an audio output valve. And if you look at that there, the screen grid is usually fed from a high potential through a resistor from the HT rail. Here we're feeding the screen grid from the cathode bias resistor down there. So you can see why this circuit is so intriguing. Now another peculiar thing here, if you look at the anode of that, it goes straight to the grid of the audio amplifier. There's no DC blocking capacitor, so we're going to have a positive bias on the grid, which is no good. You need a negative bias. Now how they get around that is they increase the value of R5 to make a potential difference between these valves, so effectively we end up with a negative voltage on there that cancels out the DC that would be already on there. So the value of that there, I think it's something like 2.2k ohms. Normally in an audio frequency amplifier that would usually be probably about 200 ohms, but here we've got 10 times more at 2.2k. So let's move over to here. Let's just have a look what it says in the description here. The circuit of the very sensitive 2 valve, in which the first valve has been adjusted to a very sensitive portion of its characteristic. Well, if you look at this, we're actually running this in anode starvation mode. The anode resistor is something like 3.3 megs. So we're running this in anode starvation to get the maximum gain out of the valve possible, which means we're probably only running an anode voltage of about 30-40 volts on that. In fact, I presume in its day it was so sensitive that if you look at that, we've got 1 foot of insulated wire for the aerial. Well, I don't think that'd be any good round here, because there's only a few stations left on medium wave and they're quite far away from here. So while that might have been, a foot might have been okay in its day, I think we're going to have a bit more than that. Now, another reason I thought I'd get this video in this Christmas is there might be no stations at all in the not too distant future on medium wave and long wave, so I thought I'd better get this in while it still works. Right, so there you go. We'll just turn over to the other page in a minute. Let's just take a look at what it looks like on the front there, and then we'll turn the page. And that is what it looks like in the back. You've got your 2 EF50s, your main transformer. Behind there is a metal rectifier, which you can't actually see in that picture, but here is the layout. There's your metal rectifier. You've got reaction and on and off, tuning and volume at that end. There's the component list. Yeah, that's your anode load resistor. Look for the first valve, 3.3 meg. One of them, 2.2k, is the cathode bias. The cathode bias resistor for the amplifier. That is a picture of the underneath. It's using a ready-made coil, which simplifies the construction an awful lot. There's your component list, and that's what it's supposed to look like, but we're not going to be able to reproduce this exactly because a lot of these parts, these are well gone. I mean, look at the size of that wire wound resistor there. And of course, the reason they're using a wire wound resistor for the volume control is because it's carrying the cathode current of that first valve there. Right, so there we have it. That's the description. Enough of that. Let's move over onto the project. Now, some of this video won't have any sound on. There's a reason for that, because I've been building this in the loft at home. And my daughter's got 2 small children that live with us, and their bedroom's underneath the loft, so I've had to be quiet. So it's not a fault. Don't go turning your volume up. Some has been recorded with no sound. Now, I've not shown everything about the construction because this has taken me quite a long time to do. And that's about it really. So here we go, let's see how far we've got so far. Now this isn't quite finished, these have got to be cut down to size. Although that cable tie does look a bit out of place, I couldn't find the correct capacitor clamp, so I've had to use a cable tie. But if we compare what I've done here with the picture in the magazine, turn it round the other way there. There we go, the good old EF50. So I mean it's looking pretty close to that so far. I have of course fitted, I'm going to fit a socket there for an aerial. In the original design it didn't have one. They've got twisted flex there, what they used to use on lamp holders many years ago. I haven't got any of that. So I'm using some braided iron flex. Now we'll take a quick look underneath and see how much it matches up with that. Right, so that is in the magazine, the underneath picture. Let's move over to here. I managed to get the right tuning capacitor, what they use in the magazine. That is why we've got because I couldn't get a clamp that fastens it over to there. Now that is a double smoothing capacitor. They have got it on the chassis there, which I couldn't get that. That's a 19, I don't know what is it, 1950 something capacitor. But if you look, I've actually rebuilt it. It's got two modern ones inside and some hot melt glue. That's an audio output transformer just from an old radio. It's not quite finished yet, and the reason is I've got a slightly higher voltage transformer, so I'm going to have to alter the value of that. And this resistor here, this is just temporary. It says in the instructions to cancel the positive bias between the two valves, you've got to adjust the value of that, so 20 milliamp flows in the HT current. I'm going to do that when it's all up and running. There the heater pairs twisted. That is the medium wave coil, and the aerial socket is going to go into there. But all in all, it's coming on quite nicely. Now one thing we are missing that we do need is a case. Now I did ask quite a few, well actually probably getting up for a year ago, I did ask a guy who's good with wood. He was an absolute perfectionist. If you gave him a job to do, whether he's working with wood, metal, it would be absolutely spot on. Now I did ask him if he could make me one of these cabinets, and I gave him this metal box to fit it into. And he had it about 3 months. I didn't hear from him, and then one day he rang up out of the blue and he said, I can't do your box. He said, I've got cancer and it's terminal. He said, you better come round and collect your wood and your aluminium box. So that was the end of that. Now I've never ever been very good at cutting wood, but I did have a go, and I don't think I made too bad a job of it. Right, so here's the wood I've been using for the case. I don't know what is it, is it blockboard, I don't know what, I think you call it blockboard. But anyway, like I say, I've been absolutely terrible. I cannot cut a piece of wood straight, but I did find out quite a difficult way of cutting wood straight, and I'll just show you that. And I'll show you what I mean. If you look at this, I've drawn a line on here. I start off cutting really well, and then you can see what's happening. I've gone way off line, absolutely terrible. The worst job you could possibly do. But I found if you draw a line, instead of cutting downways like that, if you lay the saw on the line and cut that way, I did manage to find that I could cut a piece of wood straight rather than going way off track. So the cabinet has turned out to be a million times better than what I thought I could actually do. And the circle cutting, that's just a piece I've had a trial run on. I'll show you how I did that. I bought one of these from local pound shop, and that actually turned out to work a lot better than what I thought that would do. But I just had a trial run first, because this chip's very easy, just to see how well I could do that. So let's get the case out and have a look what it looks like. Oh, and of course, if you look in here, they painted it with some sort of varnish. I've tried to do that as well. So that's what it looks like in the magazine. At the moment, my case is still drying, and I thought by using this varnish it might have covered up where I've put the screws in and some filler, but it hasn't done. I think it needs a few more coats, or I should have dyed it first. Now I can't just pick this up at the moment because it's still drying, but if you look at that, I don't think that's too bad at all. In fact, I go as far as saying this is the best case I've ever made. If you look at that, the wood is more or less cut all straight. But anyway, we'll see that when it's dry. We'll see this in the final design, or when it's finished, I mean. You know what I mean anyway. But yeah, I'm really pleased with how that's managed to turn out. I've got to get some knobs. I need 3 matching knobs. I'm going round to a friend of mine tonight, and hopefully I'll be able to come back with 3 matching knobs.
Lost me fast.
Amazing. Because you don't remember, it's all celebs now. And our kids
reaction.
People. Not without the show. And now I found my feet, but it was awkward, so again.
I bet. Who's been your favourite
Tuning
celebrity and why?
Savile Road, number 2 Mill Street. And we have been making the bespoke suits for the last 135 years.
Wow. And you made the Crystal Palace suits, didn't you? Or West Ham? One of the cup finals you
Volume?
I can't remember which one it was.
Well, when you were in charge, I think it was you guys were playing Man United in the final.
Palace, yes.
Final.
Yeah.
So my jersey
Woman. A young boy, she never gave. And even going through what she went through on that show, there's no concessions. She got gassed, she carried the same weight, she went 10 miles just like Ashley Kane did, just like everybody else did. She did it slower, but she never gave up. And then in the time when they don't know, we're watching them, she's there helping everybody else. Making sure everybody else is taken care of. She's just phenomenal. And then we had her mirror room, me and Foxy. I could have sat in there all night with her. She talked about her childhood, being left for dead, pews, the racial stick. She went to hell and high water. And that woman has a lot of backbone with her to talk about it. All she does is takes the positive, makes sure nobody else repeats that nonsense, and it does the right thing. She's out there probably fitter than she's ever been, and she's doing everything to help other people and kids. She's amazing. Great human being. Great role model.
It's interesting, the description you've just given, because people will often think that it's one-sided. It's what you're giving to the celebrities. It's what you're putting them through. But I wonder if